Hi, and welcome to the Daily Space for today, Tuesday, February the 4th. I forgot to change the date. February the 4th, 2020. I'm your host, Susie Murph, and I am here to put science in your brain. So let me go ahead, pull this up. Apologies once again, I am reading on my iPad, so apologies for not looking up all the time. This week, a blast of cold air is slowly moving across North America, reminding us that winter is still here for a few more weeks. These window-rattling gusts are driven by thermodynamics, with air of different temperatures having different pressures. I can definitely tell in my head that this is air of different pressures. Here on Earth, understanding our weather is an exceedingly difficult process because we have to take into account the effects of mountains, the heat of cities, and even the ability of oceans and rain-soaked fields to give their water back up into the air. Put differently, everything that can affect those temperatures, humidity, or the flow of air across the land affects our weather. To those of us experiencing rain and snow, it's the role of water in the weather that often matters the most. As we look out across the solar system, we see that different elements play different roles in the atmospheres on different worlds. As we've talked about before, methane plays the role of water on Titan. Now we learn that on small distant Pluto, nitrogen is the major player. So due to the lack of atmospheric pressure, we only see nitrogen in two phases, solid and gas. When we look at Pluto and see its massive heart, named Sputnik Regio, this heart is a plain of nitrogen ice. Sputnik Planitia, in particular, the left lobe of the heart, is 1,000 kilometers across, 3 kilometers deep, and it's a basin of fairly smooth nitrogen ice. So as Pluto rotates from day to night, nitrogen from the northern part of the heart sublimates into the atmosphere and travels west, against the rotation of the world, before freezing back into the southern part of the heart. Since the wind is driven by the heating of the heart, it pulses or beats over time as it rhythmically drives its unique wind patterns. So these new results show us that while physics that work here work everywhere, the outcomes of the physics can be remarkably different on other worlds. I think it's really cool to think about the fact that Pluto's heart beats. I think that's rather poetic. And if you've never heard the song about Pluto and Sharon being in love from Jonathan Colton, you should look it up. It's a beautiful song. From Pluto, now we move over to Neptune and Uranus, the two ice giants in the outer solar system. And yes, that's how I'm going to pronounce Uranus. I'm going to say it that way. If you have disagreements with me, go ahead, post them in the chat, but that's how I'm going to say it today, because otherwise I will giggle like a 12-year-old. Uranus is a pale baby blue or turquoise planet that often appears completely featureless, but it does have occasional storms in its atmosphere. Neptune is more of a Crayola blue world, with constant storms of various size dynamics. These two worlds are very similar sized and are not very different in temperature, so the question has always been, why do these worlds look so strikingly different? In new research coming to us from the University of Zurich, we learned that the differences in their collisional history, the collisions that bulked up their masses and determined their rotational axis, led to the observed differences in the atmospheres. New computer simulations are showing that Uranus most likely experienced a collision where the two centers were far apart. Call it like a glancing blow, but the two objects ended up as one object. In this scenario, the impact had a massive effect on the world's rotation. This is how we got Uranus tilted all the way on its side, because it literally spins on its side. It's kind of a crazy impact. If I were Dr. Pamela, I would have a world that I could tilt and show you. But this led to having the material of the impactor wrapping around the outside of Uranus, leaving the interior untouched. And this kind of collision also explains the very faint rings that are around Uranus. Neptune, on the other hand, had a real head-on collision. This mixed the materials of the materials of the proto-Neptune and its impactor much more completely, and allowed Neptune to continue having its more normal rotation. This violent collision also churned up the heat that continues to drive the weather we observe. Neptune was left with stormy surface, no rings, and no natural moons. So I guess bland Uranus deserves all the rings and moons it can find to wear. But this kind of science makes Neptune an even more exciting potential target for future exploration. So while we have no current missions planned to Neptune, this week NASA and the ESA are hoping to launch a new mission. The Solar Orbiter is currently scheduled to launch late in the night between Sunday and Monday. And I realize I have not been showing you my slides this whole time. I'm so sorry. Okay. There's Pluto, and you can see the beautiful heart on it. And it makes a lot more sense when I talk about the ice on Pluto if I show you the picture. Here we have Uranus, the paler one, and Neptune, the darker one. And now we have these activities. Because I remembered I made a slide to show you all of the things that are coming up for the Solar Orbiter. Now I'll go back to reading this. The Solar Orbiter is currently scheduled to launch late in the night between Sunday and Monday. Launch is scheduled for 11 p.m. Boston time, with live coverage starting 30 minutes earlier. This mission is getting a lot of hype from NASA and ESA, and they will be bringing us a pre-launch news conference Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern and a science briefing at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We will do our best to bring you this coverage as much as possible, but Friday we do have a lot of shows because normally we do Daily Space at 1 and then we do Astronomy Cast at 3 Eastern time. So we should at least be able to get you the pre-launch news conference at 1. That should be a thing. The science briefing at 2:30, we will try to get you some of that. As always, launches go when they want to go and there may be delays. So follow us on Twitter and here on Twitch, and we'll do our best to keep you up to date on when we're hopping on to talk about stuff. Okay, so let me give you my little quick wall of text. Thank you for listening. The Daily Space is written by Dr. Pamela Gay and is produced by me, Susie Murph. And we're a product of the Planetary Science Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring the solar system and beyond. If you would like to support us, please join us over at patreon.com/CosmoQuestX. We greatly appreciate any support you can give over there. Now, we will take your questions. Dr. Pamela is in the chat as @StarStrider, so you can see her in there. So please, if you would take your questions, and let me switch over to chat. There we go. If you will put your questions and you will try to use that purple star and a purple circle to highlight your questions, that helps us spot them in the chat because the chat moves very quickly when we're talking. I will go ahead over here and look and read out some of these questions. So Hanny's Vorwarp says, so are you saying that the way Neptune was hit is still mixing it 4 billion years later? That's a good question. Hey, Oranstro, thank you so much for your subscription for 10 months. That's pretty awesome. You're one of our favorites, you know. Oranstro helps us with all of the rocket roundups on Wednesdays. So he contributes quite a lot. So we love you. And then Open Cage 5 says, are there well-known formations that would not stand in Earth gravity? So those are some really good questions. And so we'll see if Dr. Pamela has some answers. First, she says Neptune. Neptune is mixed up forever. So yeah, the way Neptune was hit is still kind of having an impact on it 4 billion years later. I mean, planet collisions are big things. And yeah, they have long-term effects. Paranor says, Neptune is the weird kid. Yeah, I was the weird kid in class. I get that. Neptune's the weird kid. Answering Open Cage, Yes, Starstrider says, Mars has the kinds of mountains that our gravity would flatten. And the moon has all sorts of valleys that our gravity would fill in. Yes, you can see very different structures and landscape when you have a very different amount of gravity. Mars has ridiculously high mountains and ridiculously deep valleys. And if Mars had the same gravity that Earth does, that would all have kind of gotten smoothed out quite a bit. And let's see, what was that just came by? I saw an alert come by, and I didn't see. I think that was either a cheer or a follow or something. Thank you, whoever that was. It went by so fast I didn't see it. I'm sorry. But thank you. Hanny's Warwarp says, would Pluto have blue skies if you were on the surface? I heard Rayleigh scattering happens high up. Thank you for the follow, Orinstro, and subscription. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, that one came earlier. There was another one. Maybe that was the delayed reaction. See, it's tricky doing this streaming and things pop up and I'm like, wait, what happened? I heard it, but I was talking. Yeah, imagine me talking. So would Pluto have blue skies? I would think you would have blue skies. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it has enough atmosphere to have blue skies. That's a good question. Dr. Pamela, what do you have to say about that? And if you hear something that sounds like, my dog is sitting right down here on the floor, biting a blanket next to me. Hang on, let me see if I can pick up my camera. There's Jake. Jake. Hi. You're a good boy. So yeah, he is literally sitting down there biting a blanket to hang out next to me while I'm streaming because he's a good boy. Full screen. I don't have it set up to full screen right now, and I don't fiddle with stuff because right now it works when I turn it on. So that's why I'm kind of staying the same. But yes, that's my dog, Jake. Yes, our Daily Space family. All of us have at least one dog. I have one, Annie has two, Pamela has three. So it kind of works. All right. So Dr. Pamela says on Pluto, you can end up with blue skies at sunset. Now that would be amazing to see. Aranstra says, my understanding is that the atmosphere at this point is not thick enough to have a noticeably blue sky, but because of the composition, that is what it should look like if your eyes were sensitive enough. That makes sense. And OpenCage5 says, so close to the horizon maybe? That would definitely be where, like if you're having a sunset and the sunlight is streaming through at the horizon, that would definitely be where you're coming through the thickest amount of atmosphere, I think, if I'm understanding that right. Remember, producer, not scientist, so whatever Dr. Pamela says in the chat overrides me. New Horizons took a photo with a thin Pluto blue sky, I think, says Broken Symmetry. I think so. That's pretty cool. Our Instra says Mars sunsets are blue also, while being red or pink most of the day. I would love to see a Mars sunset in person, in my spacesuit, in person. That would be pretty cool. Now, I don't have a particular desire to travel out to space because leaving Earth on a rocket is a little bit scary to me. But I do wish I could see things with my own eyes on other planets. That would be pretty amazing. The producer is greater than the talent. Aw, thank you, Trillion H2O. No, I support the talent. I definitely support the talent in here. Dr. Pamela is the talent. Annie and I know enough to be dangerous, and we're the second line people that do this show, but we enjoy it, and we're both big space geeks, so we try really hard to be almost as good. But can't beat that degree in astronomy. So yeah, we have a lot of types of talents on our streams, and so hopefully you enjoy all of us, and we try our very best to bring you lots of really good information. Let's see. Open Cage says, I don't even have a spacesuit. Will not travel. Yeah, I don't have a spacesuit yet either. So, when we were at the Kennedy Space Center, though, the other week, we were looking at all the different evolutions of spacesuits that they had in the Apollo program. And they have one that looks like the big metal robot from Lost in Space. One of those, and it's got it was the hard suit. So it had all of the twisty joints and stuff, and it looked impossible to maneuver in, which is why they didn't end up using that suit. I mean, it was a hard suit, so it was designed to be very protective, but it was also impossible to move in. So when I think of big, heavy suits, I think of that, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way you can maneuver and do anything in that. It's going to have to be something flexible that you can get out and function in. Oh, Larry Weird says, I am on-air talent now. Thank you. I'm working on it. I'm working on getting better at doing this stuff, and you guys are a very wonderful, patient, appreciative audience that make it easy. And our moderators keep it very friendly in here, which is really nice. We generally don't have too many problems in our streams. We have seen some craziness in some of the other ones, and Fraser's open space stream can get a little wild. So I'm really glad we have amazing moderators here. Thank you guys all so much. Haney's Vorwerp says, how do you get a proper seal on a spacesuit? And while Dr. Pamela is answering that, I want to echo her comment that you guys are the best chat on Twitch. Thank you. You guys are wonderful. You are smart. You are understanding. You are relaxed and chill and enjoy going with the flow, and don't mind if I totally goof things up, like forgetting to show you my slides because I'm talking too much. So answering the proper seal spacesuit question, Dr. Pamela says, the same way you do on water pipes and gas pipes, threaded joints and snap together joints that have O-rings. And our Anstra says, mechanically most of the time. You need to have things that very much fit together and then mechanically tighten. And then you have the seals and stuff, and you have to have them out of the proper materials. And of course, the right size, clearly. And you do a lot of testing. That's the truth. You do a lot of testing. And that was why when the earlier this year, last year, the two women were going to do the all-female spacewalk, and then they had to cancel it at the last minute. It was because the spacesuit parts that they had available to put together for the various people on the space station, they didn't have enough of the medium-sized bodies, I believe, for all of the women that were going to be out in the spacesuit. She thought she was going to be able to use the larger one, but when you get out in space, your body changes size a little bit. Basically, if I'm remembering correctly, you get a little, your spine changes, your joints decompress a little bit, and so something that may have fit you on Earth may not fit you as well when you get into space. And so they didn't have the proper suits to be able to get out and do the maneuverability that they needed at the time. They just didn't have enough. So that's why that got rescheduled for later, when they were able to have more of the proper size suits, because they knew how their bodies would change in space. I mean, you do as much as you can on Earth to prepare for those spacewalks. And you practice, but there's no replacement for being out in space and realizing what zero G does to your body. So you have to make adjustments there. And spacesuits are very specific and don't have a lot of adjustments in them other than the parts that you have available. Because I think they've got torsos and they've got a few different parts they can put together, but you're limited with how many you have on board. So yeah, there's no replacement for displacement. This is true. And Dr. Pamela, feel free to tell me if I'm spouting off stuff and I don't know what I'm talking about. Tell me, and whatever she says is right over what I'm saying. But from what I'm understanding, that was part of it, was that they thought something was going to fit. Then when they got up there, they found it did not fit properly to do an 8-hour spacewalk where you've got to be outside using tools and doing stuff in a very physical environment. I mean, those spacewalks are exhausting because in addition to trying to do the work you're doing, you're fighting the spacesuit a bit too because you don't have your normal maneuverability. And it's very intense, it's very stressful, it's very mentally draining as well as physically draining. So if you got something that doesn't fit a little, that's enough to cause a problem when you're doing it for 8 hours. Dr. Pamela says they also found that the medium suit she planned to use wasn't well maintained, and the maintained suit was too big to accurately use. Yeah, so they had the problem of it wasn't a suit in great condition. Yeah. And you don't want to go out in a spacesuit that's not in great condition and be outside for 8 hours because you don't want something to happen to your spacesuit when you're outside. That's probably the thing that scares me about space the most, is that you can't just go outside and take a breath of fresh air when you want to. So, yeah, that wouldn't be a breath of fresh air. So Hanny's Warwarp says, would it make sense to have an exoskeleton in the suit like they use to lift large packages? I think that in some types of suits, we will end up having exoskeletons. I think they will make different types of suits for different types of things that you will have to do as we develop more permanent places out in zero G, like more permanent space stations where you have work going on. Maybe you're building spacecraft out there. You're going to have different kinds of suits. And so a suit with some sort of exoskeleton will probably be the kind of thing they have in the future. Dr. Pamela says right now they use the Canadarm instead of an exosuit. And that makes sense because number one, it's already there. Number two, they already know how to use it. And number three, they're not having to develop a lot of different things. But once you get more different organizations out in space doing stuff, you'll probably see a lot more different types of equipment. They'll figure out ways to try it out and see what things work the best. Folks are developing exosuits for Earth gravity and confined areas, Starstrider says. Yes, we have seen some of those. I know that the military is developing some, and some civilian contractors, and I don't know if that's Boston Dynamics thing. I know they're doing robots, but I could see companies like that probably developing exosuits so you could lift heavy things and stuff. It makes sense. It's definitely the kind of thing that is under development, may not be close to being usable yet. Open Cage 5 says Canadarm needs no pre-breathing as it is electric instead of combustion based like we are. This is very true. Yeah, I didn't think it was Boston Dynamics. Starstrider says exosuits with someone else. Yeah, I don't remember who. If any of you knows who is developing exosuits, you can feel free to let us know. But yeah, Henny's Warwarp says it's sort of like having power steering for your normal movement. Yes, this is true. It's just stuff to give you a little extra abilities. I mean, if you've driven a vehicle that doesn't have power steering versus a vehicle that does, you feel that assist. It's major. I grew up on a farm. I drove tractors. Tractors don't have power steering, or at least the ones I drove growing up did not. So you had to do a lot of physical labor to turn and to do stuff with it. And then when you get into a car with power steering, it's so much easier. Yeah. Star Strider says the primary need is for people who are disabled. Secondary and commercial use is warehouses and other heavy lift situations. Yes, this is true. We have a family friend who is a quadriplegic, and an exosuit would allow him to get up and walk. And he's been in a wheelchair since we were in college. That would be an amazing use. So that's definitely the kind of situation where you would love for them to have some sort of an exosuit. And if you watched The Expanse this season before last, you saw a situation where basically there was a makeshift exosuit put into use, and you could see just how useful such a situation would be with the spinal injury. So very cool. Yes, love The Expanse. It's pretty awesome. Spinal injuries are bad. Exosuits can help. Yeah, Trillion H2O says, with power steering, you don't need a steering wheel as big as a hula hoop either. No, you don't. When I was driving tractors, when I was growing up, the steering wheels were huge, and you had to twist really hard. And there may have been a small amount of power steering in there, but you're dealing with farm equipment, so they're not going to make it fancy and easy. They're just going to make it maybe where you don't exhaust yourself doing stuff. But then when you get into a nice car and it's just like you can almost steer with a finger, you can tell the difference, definitely. Yeah, farm kid. Let's see. Now, Michael T. Myers points out, but the Canadarm has to be driven by someone inside the ISS. This is true. Someone else is driving it, so it is not quite the same level of intuitive direction as if the person doing the work was driving it themselves. But that also means that someone else can handle part of the job for you as well. But this is why they have to practice. They have to coordinate, and they have to know what each team member needs to do to get the spacewalk's desired result. So this is why they spend so many months practicing back on Earth, because this is a complicated procedure. It's almost like a dance, and you have to know all the steps to the dance and be able to improvise when something goes wrong in the middle of the dance. So JC, hi JC, hypothetically speaking, could I use the vacuum of space to freeze salami sandwiches and solar flares to thaw them out? Also, would this give me cancer? I think you could use the vacuum of space to freeze your salami sandwich. You could use a solar flare to thaw them out, but if you're out there in that solar flare, that could give you cancer, but I don't think the sandwich would give you cancer. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Pamela, but I think the sandwich would not give you cancer. But if you're standing in the solar flare, that might not be a good thing. Larry Weird says, speaking of exosuits, what is the pressure like on the ocean floor of Europa? Super high pressure there, Open Cage 5 says. I don't know what the pressure is on the ocean floor of Europa. Generally, ocean floor here, at least, pressure is ridiculously high. That's why it's almost harder to go to the ocean floor than it is to go to space. Because when you're going out into space, you're dealing with no pressure and containing your own. Whereas going down to the bottom of the ocean, you're having to deal with holding out the pressure of the ocean. And that is very difficult. And Broken Symmetry says that salami sandwich may give you heartburn, but that's probably just because it's salami. And I love salami, but it might give you heartburn. And Dr. Pamela says, exposing a sandwich to the vacuum of space would do horrible things to the ingredients. The escape of gas and moisture, yuck. Yeah, so don't put your sandwich out in space. And don't use a solar flare to warm it back up. Mythtown says, so much for the dream of CQuest DSV being real anytime soon. I know, right? That was a fun idea. The storylines were a little cheesy, but the idea of a ship under the water going that deep was really cool. And it's going to be very hard for us to explore the deep, deep ocean because of the limits of pressure. Yeah. Open Cage says, one is a bit of science and a good amount of engineering. The other one is lots of both. Yes, going into space is science and a good amount of engineering. Going to the bottom of the ocean is a lot of science and a lot of engineering. And probably materials we don't know how to make yet to be able to withstand the pressures. Although, anything we use to do that, we might be able to use to go and explore Venus, except for the addition of the atmosphere being toxic there too. So, we need more scientists and engineers. That's what we need. Dr. Pamela says, the solar flare might not thaw your sandwich the way you'd think. The density of particles might not be high enough to transfer enough energy to warm it. So, solar flare, not a reliable way to heat up your sandwich. Good to know. And vacuum isn't always cold. I'm assuming you're in shadow where it's cold. Yes, if you're in the sun, it's hot. And this is why spacesuits, when you're out on a spacewalk, have to be very tough, because they have to protect you from the cold of space when you're in the shadow and the heat when you're in the glare of the sun. Normal sunshine in space can reach up to 200 Celsius, according to Larry Weird. That's hot. JC says, salami fans unite. Solar flare thawing sounds so cool though. Yeah, but it won't taste good. So save your salami for on Earth. I'm with you there. I have pepper-coated salami in my fridge right now because I'm kind of I end up having to eat a lot of protein. So my favorite snacks are salami and cheese. So I'm with you there. And Dr. Pamela says, not gonna lie, I liked CosmoQuest. I did too. Roy Scheider was great in that. That was just a fun show. That was neat. I think they stopped making it because it was too expensive, but I'm not sure. But that was a fun one. Darwin the Dolphin Fan Club. Yes, Darwin is better than Flipper. At me about that, okay? Darwin was better than Flipper. JC says, I have a stupid question, but I'm genuinely curious. There are very few really stupid questions, just so you know. Why would the vacuum of space make the sandwich explode? Is there a lot of pressure in space? No, there is very little pressure in space. But that is why things kind of just go. It's the pressure in the sandwich trying to get out. And because when you've got no pressure and stuff with pressure, it's going to try to equalize. This is my layperson explanation. So when you have something that has a lot of pressure and something with no pressure, it's going to try to equalize. So what that means is the pressure in the sandwich is going to explode out to try to fill up any gaps in the pressure out in space. And so it's going to blow out, basically blow apart in a lot of ways. And yeah, that's going to be messy. You don't want your sandwich exploding in space. So even if you do get it thawed out at that point, you won't have a lot left to make a sandwich that you want to eat. Yeah. Yeah, vacuum literally means no pressure, the lack of pressure in there. So anything that has pressure, like your body, it's going to try to escape and it's going to go poof. And that's not good for bodies, just like it's not good for sandwiches. I'm glad you're learning so much. And see, you're asking good questions. Don't feel bad. These are not stupid. These are good questions, because if you've never heard, you don't know. Open Cage says, so I must open my mouth and close my eyes if I have to go for a spacewalk without that suit. Well, number one, you don't want to go for a spacewalk without a suit. I think in theory, you could survive a few seconds in space, but it would be rough. And basically, you would get something equivalent to the bends if you were able to get retrieved fast enough to be saved. Fraser likes to talk about this a lot on some of his streams. He talks about what it's like to be out in space without a spacesuit and how would you die if you did that. It creeps me out a little bit to think of. I don't like to think of being spaced or having to jump. Or I think in Battlestar Galactica they had to jump out of the ship. They had to jump out of a place where there was a fire and be caught by a shuttle. And I don't know how practical that idea would have been, but I guess it's better than just knowing you're going to die. What I think is that you have to try to breathe as much of the air out of your lungs as possible, otherwise everything in you is going to try to escape. But you'd be pretty banged up, bruised up, you'd be full of the bends, I think. And yeah, Dr. Pamela says not practical, but they got the science correct. So okay, so yeah, we're right. It would theoretically, it could be possible to survive for a few seconds, but you would be in pretty bad shape and they would have to treat you very quickly. Exhale totally, then you do get the bends and all the blood vessels start bursting. So yeah, on Battlestar Galactica, I think the Callie was one of the people that did that, and so she started, basically when they found her, she had bruises all over her because everything started bursting. But they got her and they put her inside a pressure, what do you call those? Yeah, the barometric chamber, and slowly increase the pressure. Basically, they had to get all the bubbles out of her body. That's what the bends are. The bends are where all the gases in your system make bubbles in your bloodstream, and that can kill you. That's why divers have such a problem with it. So, yeah, you have to get that evened out. So JC says, do you remember Heidi Marie Stephenson Piper? I hope I said that name right. I think she was an astronaut who passed out after returning to Earth. So what causes people to faint after coming and leaving Earth? Actually, she's probably not the only person to faint. She just may be the only person that we got a report that fainted, because I think when they come back to Earth on the Soyuz, they often have very rough landings. And whenever you see astronauts coming back on the Soyuz, you usually see them on a stretcher or at least a seat when you see them right after they've come out of the spacecraft. Generally, if you've been up there a while in space, you can't walk when you get back. It takes a little while for you to recover and get your body sorted back out. Between pressure and your blood pressure and, depending on how long you've been up there, your muscle atrophy, yeah. It takes a little while. It can take days to weeks to recover from being in space for a while and be able to get up and moving around, because your heart has to learn to handle your blood pressure, because when you're in space, your heart's not having to beat as hard. It's not having to fight anything to get your blood circulating from your head to your feet and back to your heart. When you get back to Earth, you're standing up, your heart's having to beat a lot harder to get your blood to your head as opposed to your feet. If your blood doesn't get to your head, you pass out. So your body has to get back used to fighting against gravity. Open Cage 5 says, so the treadmills are most important for the heart. The treadmills are important, but it's not just for doing the treadmill. What they actually have to have are resistance bands that hold them to it, so that way they get something that sort of simulates gravity. But yes, they have to do a lot of exercise to even... They still lose muscle mass, they still lose muscle abilities, but that's been the most effective way to fight losing a lot of your ability there. Twitch doesn't want my money, it seems, Mythtown says. I'm so sorry, Mythtown. We would like your money. So keep trying, maybe. I'm sorry Twitch is not behaving. Open Cage 5 says, heart atrophy can't be fun. No, It won't be. And it's hard to get back to normal when you get back to Earth. This is why astronauts have to be in such good shape before they go. Because if you're in really good tip-top shape, your body can kind of handle it a little bit longer. And you're already accustomed to the exertion and the exercise that you need to get your body into shape. JC says, it's interesting. It's crazy how hostile space is for humans and most other life. I mean, we need this crazy planet just to protect us from it. Space is like a supervillain. Yes. And that's why we need to take care of this one planet where we can exist. And that's my tiny little political campaign for today. Yes. Space is trying to kill you. This is very true. And we have a poster for that. Starstrider put the link to our little Redbubble store. We have a poster, and I believe we have t-shirts and things. You can go over to Redbubble and see what we have. I have not checked it recently. I have to go because I keep having to buy new t-shirts that are smaller. So I may have to go back over there. But yeah, we have to protect this planet because it's the only place we can live without a lot of help. And we don't know how to do that yet. So we really need to keep our home base safe. Yeah. And now I'll step back off my soapbox. Does anybody have any other questions for today? Otherwise, I will wrap this up and get off on and start working on the blog post. Because what I'll do this afternoon is I'll take this video down, edit it, put it on YouTube. I'll do the blog post, and we'll get the podcast recorded. And then we'll get all of that out to patrons and get this up over at dailyspace.org. So you can see the links to the articles that we talked about. You can see all these images that I showed you. And you can feel free to share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with people you don't know who you want to just follow us. And yeah. We appreciate every follow, every subscription, every cheer, every encouraging word, honestly. You know, if you can't support us monetarily, if Twitch is being a butt, I'm so sorry, Mythtown. Yeah, Mythtown says, I hate to say it, but if Twitch doesn't want you to have my money, I may have to use it on Lego. I understand. But every bit of support that you give, even if it's just word of mouth to your friends, is greatly appreciated. Because the more people that watch, the more chance we can get some ad revenue here too. And the more people we might find that can help donate and help us keep bringing you science. Because we desperately want to do that. So what exactly is CosmoQuest? Well, we are a group of people who do interesting science news, science. We try to do community science, basically getting projects out there where all of you can help us do science. And we are a nonprofit. We are part of the Planetary Science Institute, which is an organization dedicated to exploring the solar system and beyond. And we're nonprofits, so we don't have a ton of money. So you guys are supporting us. So if you've ever thought we need to spend more money on science, this is a way you can directly do it because we have various programs going on. One of the things we did this past year was look at images of the asteroid Bennu and help the OSIRIS-REx mission find places to take their samples. And that's going to be coming up pretty soon. And we had a lot of people contribute and help find 4 sites, and they picked 2 out of those that they're going to be trying to take samples from. And so we're going to be looking at new projects like that. Like we've got some where you can look at the moon and map craters coming up. Right now we are between grants, so we are about to be doing big overhauls of all of our software and stuff. And so if you like doing software, you can join us. How does someone join? Well, one thing you can definitely do is follow us here on Twitch because you will hear about the stuff we're doing. You can join our Discord, which if y'all haven't put the Discord in, it's probably here in the link. There's the Discord. Thank you. Nightbot right over here has our Discord link. If you join our Discord, you can chat with all of us, and we will keep you posted on the various projects and things going on. That's probably the very best way if you're interested in knowing what projects we have going on. Follow Discord, follow various channels in there, and we will tell you what's going on. Dr. Pamela and a lot of our volunteers are working on software now. We have software out on GitHub that's open source. So if you're a programmer, we could use your help. And yeah, basically follow and we can tell you what's going on. I'm the producer, so I'm generally wrangling all of these shows. We have the Daily Space every day at 1. We also coordinate to do the weekly Space Hangout, which is Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. All the times I'm listing are Eastern, I apologize. 8 p.m. Eastern time, where Fraser Cain from Universe Today and space journalists have an interview with someone interesting in space and science, and then they talk about various news press releases for the week. And then on Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern, we do Astronomy Cast, where Dr. Pamela and Fraser Cain cover various topics in depth. They cover a topic an episode, and then they have a question and answer session. And we also release all of these things as podcasts, and we have them over on YouTube. We simulcast a lot of them here on Twitch. And we're going to be trying to develop even more shows for you. We want to start doing more interviews with various scientists. We have all the scientists at the Planetary Science Institute, plus all the people that Dr. Pamela gets to meet when she goes to conferences, that we would love to start doing some expanded interviews. But once again, we need some support because right now we can't afford to pay all of this full time. So the more hours we can do, the more content we can bring to you. So every bit of it goes to help. And when you pay and it goes to me, it goes to help put my kids into college. So I greatly appreciate that. And my daughter is studying to be an engineer. My son is going to figure out if he wants to do computer science or psychology, something like that. So you're supporting some potential future scientists or creatives, because Kevin may end up writing too. So thank you very much for all of your support. Every penny goes to us to bring stuff back to you here. So we greatly appreciate it. Thank you for the follow, JC. We're glad you found us today, and we're glad you asked lots of questions. All right. I need to go and get stuff done with all the rest of this afternoon, but you guys have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I believe Annie will be back tomorrow with our weekly rocket roundup, which our intro is probably writing up for her as we speak, or at least gathering the information. There's a lot of stuff going on this week, so I think there's a lot of launches to look forward to. But thank you so much for watching, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.